Let's see.
Gore readings. Welcome to another episode of Flesh Wound Horror. Don't fucking me, already fucking me up, Chris. God damn it. A new episode of Flesh Wound Horror tonight. Oh, God damn it, Dan. Don't message me while I'm doing the intro, you stupid fuck. Okay, take two. Gore readings and welcome to a new episode of Flesh Wound Horror. I am producer Todd, joined tonight with our very special guest, zombie expert, the Spooky Picture Show's own Chris Macgibbon, and no family. We will be talking some Troma / Vinegar Syndrome for the haters. So we got one that is should I call it a holy grail, or what do you consider? Because it's the last piece of the puzzle for anything you've ever wanted to finally hit home video.
I can rest now. I don't know what to call it. Other than still can't believe it's here.
Can you? Well, I know. Well, I mean, we've talked about this movie. This is since I've known you, this has been a theme that we've talked about. You've been trying to get this out. I already see a question in the chat.
It was once Vinegar Syndrome got a hold of Troma's library that I was like, yo, no one else is going to touch this fucking movie. Please do this. And for the last 10 years, that's been my thing. So,
it's probably best it took this long, because if it would have came out, say, I'm sure you probably started pestering around the time of Christmas Evil or Lust for Freedom, somewhere early when they first started. I'm just guessing. So if it would have came out then, it would have sold like nothing. That's the thing that now the slipcover alone, that thing's going to eventually sell out. So that's one good thing for this one.
Yeah. There's a ton of copies on eBay right now though. So I think a lot of people who bought it are trying to unload it already, but hey, whatever.
Well, that brings us to our first question in the chat from Dan. And that is, does anyone in this world actually like Night of Horror? Well, since as long as I've known Chris and we've been talking about this movie, he's brought this movie up. And every time he's brought it up, I was like, oh, okay, I want to see it. He's told me, do not watch it. Do not watch it. I finally watched it. Chris, I should not have watched it. It was not good.
I mean, I am one to say I told you so. So I told you so.
And I knew that was coming, but I had to admit it.
Yeah, it's a terrible movie. I think even Tony would probably own up to that. I think, but I also think it's great that it's included in the package, because you can actually, if you watch Night of Horror first and then you watch Curse of the Screaming Dead, it's like watching Citizen Kane comparatively. There's a flow, there's a plot, there's characters, there's action, there's an actual score in the film. It's not just the same song played over and over again.
You can 100% see the filmmaking progression from the first to the second feature.
Yeah, and it wasn't that much time in between the two. I think it was only a couple of years. So, I don't recall.
Well, you know what? We should probably just
jump right Night of Horror. It. Night of Horror was like 79 or something like that, and Curse was shot in 81. So
and when was Curse's The Mogul tape, which you do have handy?
I do.
What year was that release?
I want to say this was like 84, 86. It doesn't have a date on the case, but that's the Mogul tape. with the much superior artwork than what Vinegar Syndrome used on the flip, but we won't get into that. But
hey, you leave it alone.
I don't mind that poster. I really don't. I just fucking hate that title.
I am aware. Yeah, I get it, but I still got my Troma tape at least.
I got one around here somewhere too.
And I still got your.
See, I thought that was gone. I thought you sold
it's
that.
here. You told me I could, but I didn't.
Oh, look at that.
So it's still here safe.
Great. I don't need it.
Okay, now it's going to be on eBay. No.
Care now.
Well, no, it'll be nice in the Troma section then. I didn't grab the DVD, even though it's kind of rare, but I figured you're good with the tapes.
Yeah, no, the DVD was just the tape master slapped on a DVD. It really wasn't anything to write home about.
It wasn't, but well, I mean, do you want to tell us what the movie's about?
Well, which do you want to start? Night of Horror first? I mean,
well, I guess we can. Yeah, well, we might as well do them chronologically, even if this is a supplementary feature and technically non-Troma for the Troma fans out there. For Orc out there, here you go, some non-Troma.
Right. Well, I mean, so Night of Horror is about a group of people who go, I believe, to take a look at a cabin that two brothers have inherited, and their camper breaks down in the middle of a Civil War battlefield, where one of the girls can talk to ghosts. The ghosts there tell them some shit's going down. We need you to find our captain's head and bring him to the cemetery where we're all buried so he can rest, and therefore we can. End movie. I just saved you an hour and 18 minutes of your life.
And it was not as entertaining as Chris telling that story.
Yeah. When Tony was putting this package together, he had asked me to help participate in the features because I've known Tony for a while. He was actually the first person I interviewed and was published with an article for Scars magazine, where I wrote about Curse of the Screaming Dead. And the whole spin on the article was, as an independent filmmaker, you could make these kind of trashy movies or these low budget backyard movies that a handful of people have ever heard of, and most of them have, probably don't like them very much. But you could still use that as a platform to, become something in Hollywood, because Tony at the time was working for Disney and had been working for Disney for a while, restoring old TV shows and films through basically the sale of Curse of the Screaming Dead. He was able to use that money and move out to LA and pursue his dream. So I thought that was a cool story and a cool way to spin it. But even if you make something that may not be great, you could, if it's technically sound, you might be able to use it as a platform to get where you want to go. So kind of encouraging, filmmakers just to keep going and make a movie, just make a movie. And that was kind of his mindset too. But I remember, talking to him about Night of Horror, and he has fondness for both films for sure. I think even on the interviews that are included on the disc, he doesn't trash them. He understands they're not high art, but he also appreciates what they did for him. And he really did learn a lot between Night of Horror and Curse of the Screaming Dead in terms of just almost everything. And but Night of Horror, I remember telling him, like, there's like 10 minutes of padding in a 78-minute movie. That's aggressive. That's a lot. The opening scene is two guys with their backs to the camera talking into a bar. That's 8 minutes long, and then when they go driving to Maryland or wherever they're going, it feels like you're going with them, because that driving scene lasts about another 7 or 8 minutes with one piano chord being hit continuously. And then there's the battle sequence that has not a terrible song, but not a great song, another 8-minute scene. So there was a lot of, and then like at the end of the film, nothing really happens. It just sort of kind of ends. And yeah.
And then you're happy it's done. And then you wonder what you're doing with your life that you just watched Night of Horror.
Yeah.
We do have a few people in the chat who've never even heard of it. A few people. Yeah, this didn't really have a great distribution. I know there was a tape because you have the tape, if I'm not mistaken, or had it.
I do have a copy of it on VHS. So I think the Genesis VHS was first. There was also a budget release I think from a company. I think it was that Better Home Video or something like that, where they just took the artwork of the Genesis release and they animated it. They did a painting of it instead of the picture. It was just this picture of this really cheap zombie mask. So I think people who picked it up might have thought it was a zombie movie, but it's supposed to be a ghost movie. I remember when I found it at a video store that was local to my area while I was looking for Curse of the Screaming Dead, because I had rented that tape all the time when I was a kid, and I was kind of convinced that like somebody in my town still had it. So I went to all the different video stores that were still around to see if any of them had purchased it or inherited it, and or knew where I could find it, or if they knew the owners of the video store that I went to see if they could track it. Whatever. I was 12 years old or something. I thought, I could figure I could figure it out. And they had Night of Horror there. And I remember asking the woman behind the counter if I could buy it because I knew it was by the same director. And she looked it up and she was like, "Yeah, it hasn't rented for a while. I could sell it to you." And like, I feel like after I bought it, she celebrated because it was gone,
He's like,
forever.
Sucker.
And then I went home and watched it and tried to bring it back, and she wouldn't let me. So I still have that tape. I think I've watched it. No, I've only ever seen the movie twice. The second time was on the Blu-ray. The first time was that tape, and then when I watched it on Blu-ray, I was really grateful for the fast forward button at that point because I knew where I could fast forward. And but watch it with the commentary on. I suppose if I haven't done that yet, but if you do that, it might be more.
Dan says that the director took the money for the reshoots and made an entirely different film, being Curse of the Screaming Dead. Night of Horror cost around $4,000. They used the $12,000 for reshoots and made Curse of the Screaming Dead instead. Probably a good call. I mean,
yeah.
And though we did have a question. Okay, Cliff Booth says he's watching the bar scene right now on YouTube. Billy Bean asks, so is it art house style or just lack of storytelling? So they used every piece of film they had.
Option B.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, option B. He knew he had to deliver a feature that ran at least well, at the time they wanted 90 minutes, but he figured if he could get to 78, I think is the runtime, it's almost 80, then he was in good shape and he could get it distributed. And a distributor looked at it and said that, to echo what Dan said, it was kind of there was really nothing in the film, nothing happened, but if he could shoot some gore scenes and some scenes with skin, tits and ass, the distributor could sell it. And Tony took that opportunity to say, well, I could do that, or I could just make a whole other movie. And then Curse of the Screaming Dead was born. I think he had a friend write the script, so he didn't write it this time, but he told him it was like a loose remake of his first film.
Probably a good call.
Might have been. I think on Night of Horror, there wasn't much of a script to begin with. So, I think there was a lot of ad-libbing involved. I know a lot of it was like one take deals. Like they really didn't have enough time to do more than one. One of the most hysterical scenes in the film is when the brother is arguing about their father, and the dude just straight up sputters his line, forgets his line, all in the same breath, and then like has this awkward pause and then keeps going. And all of a sudden gets angry. I'm just like, wow, that's acting. But you could totally tell that was a one take deal and they couldn't go back and do it again. And that same guy was a theater actor, so he used his hands a lot, I guess. So they had him holding on to the RV all the time so he wouldn't like flail his hands around, because that's what he would do if he wasn't holding on to something. Backyard movie making magic. Have your actor hold on to a pole so you don't move.
Whatever works. So if you you are going to rate this. So on a scale of 1 to 5, what does Chris give Night of Terror?
A 5. A Night of Horror, first of all.
Night of Horror. I'm trying to think of a different movie.
I think it's a 5. What the hell? No. It's terrible. And I love Tony and I love him as a filmmaker. In his own way. I really applaud the fact that this guy really went out did it. You know what I mean? I mean, he made a movie, and they may not have been great movies, they may not have been amazing movies, but he still went out and made a movie. And back then, especially, that was much more difficult than it is now. So for the effort, I would give it a 1, because I mean, at least you put something together. We're talking about it 40 years later, so it accomplished something. Whether it's the worst thing anyone's ever seen or it's the best thing they've ever seen, it's still out there. And yeah.
Chris is a lot nicer and more forgiving, I guess, on this one. I can't. This is the white Axum. I got to give it a big 0. The only thing good that came out of this is you got Curse of the Screaming Dead.
And actually, I didn't think Night of Horror was going to be included, because when we were talking about this years ago, I was under the impression that Night of Horror was lost. Like, all the film materials were gone, and the only material that Tony had at the time that he told me he had was like 3 reels of the film, because I guess on the first run he was doing to create a print, the machine fucked up somehow, so he had to start over again. But he paid for those reels, so he kept them. And we just thought the film was incomplete, and we couldn't figure out who had it, like where it went, where any materials went, because the 2 companies that did have any kind of distribution rights certainly didn't leave a paper trail. So
and that never passed through Troma's hands either, correct?
It didn't. No, he actually found the negative. He found it in his storage. He didn't even know he had it, so that's how we ended up with it. But I know that when I pitched Curse of the Screaming Dead to Vinegar Syndrome, their big thing was, we'll do it, but we want Night of Horror with it. We want to do both. And I just kind of was like,
because I the layer.
Well, I honestly think their mindset was, because we had kind of confirmed it was lost, that we would never get Night of Horror, so they couldn't, like, it would never happen. And then
you got a 2-disc Curse of the Screaming Dead Vinegar Syndrome set. What the fuck?
I don't know. I don't know how that.
That's the one thing I didn't grab, of course.
Well, Tony produced. That was the other cool thing about the package, is Tony did all the extras, and he asked me to help and be a part of them and shoot a piece for him, similar to there's 2 girls on the disc who talk about Night of Horror, and he wanted me to do a similar piece for Curse, but I was knee deep in other stuff at the time, and I just couldn't put the time aside to do it. And I felt bad, because like, he was hoping I could get something in there, because like, realistically, I was probably the only person out there that was begging for this movie to get released on any format outside of VHS. So, but whatever.
It had a DVD.
It had a crappy DVD.
There were alternatives out there that no one bought, but no comment. Well, I guess, we should just get right into Curse of the Screaming Dead.
Yeah.
AKA Curse of the Cannibal Confederates. It's funny. These 2 movies, I refer to them under, like, this one I will call Curse of the Screaming Dead, but House on Tombstone Hill, Dead Come Home is always Dead Dudes in the House for me. Just stuck with me. So it's one of those. So I know you're Dead Come Home. That's your favorite title?
Well, that's the original title.
Okay, I thought it was your favorite too.
I mean, I like House on Tombstone Hill out of the 3 of them the best. I think that one.
It's funny. The thing with that, it just kind of sounds a little too generic for me.
It's most fun. I hate Dead Dudes in the House. I
know you do.
I fucking hate that poster. That's
I'm still
one of the
mad.
worst.
Where the fuck's my Rabid Granny?
Yeah.
Speaking of Rabid Granny, Vinegar Syndrome Welby. I'm fucking stoked for that. But
there you go.
But let's talk about Curse of the Screaming Dead. So for those of our viewers who have not seen it, what is this film about?
Yeah, this is gonna sound familiar. A group of friends go out camping in the wilderness and stumble across a Confederate graveyard, where one of their members steals a diary belonging to the captain of a battalion of Confederate soldiers that are buried out in the graveyard. And stealing that diary is a bad idea, because it awakens those long dead soldiers who wrench themselves up from the ground and start hunting the hapless hunters, pursuing them in an endless sort of quest for revenge and flesh, because they like to eat people. And and then things happen and zombies, gore, and a really, really long flesh eating scene.
All right. So how old were you when you saw this one? Because this one is one of your Mount Rushmore films.
I
I'm gonna
was
go with.
young. I can't remember the age exactly, but I was single digits. I remember that. I was in the low single digits. I was either 3, 4, maybe even 5. But I remember I was at an age where if your film had zombies and a scene where they came out of the ground and a scene where they ate people, I was a happy camper. This movie has all 3 of those things. So I really didn't get that this was a quote bad movie. And I don't think I ever really kind of understood that how unliked it was until I got the internet. That's when I sort of found out that this was considered one of the worst films out there. And in
It doesn't help that Lloyd considers it one of the worst Troma films. Too.
exactly, that was my next point when you got
Bottom
Lloyd
5.
Kaufman, telling everyone that this is one of the worst titles that we own.
Now I wonder if he means it's the worst or the worst performing.
If you ever get him, ask him, clarify. I don't know. Because I don't know how. I know they picked it up in '88, and they and that was the seed money that Tony used to fly out to Los Angeles and build his career and his life out there. But when I still remember when I talked to him about the title change, because the other proposed title was The South Shall Rise Again, and they didn't use that. But the sales rep at Troma called him and said, "Oh, we're going to retitle the film." And he really didn't understand the point, because he's like, Curse of the Screaming Dead is a pretty sellable title. But I think they were worried that like the mogul tape was out there and
people would have known what it was.
People would have known, yeah, and wouldn't have picked it up. So they said, we're going to call it Curse of the Cannibal Confederates, because the guy had a British accent and he was really confused. He's like, Cannonball Confederates? What the fuck? He's like, I don't care. It's your movie. Call it whatever you want. But Cannonball Confederates? And he said, no. Cannibal Confederates. And he goes, oh, wow, I like that less. And and that's what they called it. And I always wondered why. I don't know if it was because Mogul wasn't a big company, and it's not like they had a huge distribution ring. Troma certainly had a bigger outreach at that point than
I didn't see it till the Troma tape.
Yeah, so I think I think there's, I don't know, maybe they just thought like retitling it would help their chances of, even if somebody had seen it as under the other title, they would pick it up. What was confusing about their release was not that they took footage from earlier in the film and spliced it at the beginning over the opening titles. It's that they did that and didn't put their titles over that footage to say like, okay, we're retitling this. And yes, there's eventually going to, because the zombies do take a bit to show up, there's eventually going to be zombies in this film. So here they are now. You'll see this all later. It confused a lot of people. A lot of people thought that was like the opening of the film, that the zombies were already out and about,
right,
roaming around already, and that, they cut into the movie, and then it happened, all those scenes happen again. That was one of the main things that bothered me about that retitling, was that they did those kind of cheesy video graphics over the film, and they could have done it over the original titles.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
I had to blur the flag on the poster just in case Facebook got a little iffy about it.
Oh yeah, because of the Confederate flag.
Dan threw out there. This one has some funny Ed Wood moments. You can see chips on the styrofoam tombstones. Kiyomi, the blind girl, instantly focuses and looks directly at everything, and Mr. Cotter blows up zombies.
That's true. There was a funny story about her where she was playing the character as somebody who was unconventionally blind, in that that she could not see, but she could sort of see. I don't remember how he kind of approached it, but he let her try it out. And I think And then he looked at it and decided it wasn't working, so she played it a little more conventionally blind. But I still don't know why he made her blind in the first place. It doesn't add anything to the character. It doesn't change anything. It never becomes a hindrance for the character either. There's never a point in the film where she's like alone with a zombie and doesn't know it because she can't see him. You know, like there's nothing like that where her being blind really does anything to the character at all, other than like people making a mention of it. So, and I think people always joke in the opening titles he had to credit her as blind Keely because it was so kind of hard to believe that she was because of the way she played it. But that was a nod to something else. I can't remember what it was, but it was supposed to be a nod to something else.
Could we just go with like she's pretending to be blind to trick everyone? That's why she really is looking. There you go.
Maybe.
Problem solved.
Maybe.
Dan has a question. This is actually a really good one. Were the human non-decomposed hands on the zombies an issue for you?
I mean,
that's Chris's way of saying yes, but it didn't bother him when he was a kid.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I don't. Well, when I was a kid on DHS, you didn't see it.
Oh, that's true.
You know what I mean?
On DHS, you didn't even know they had hands.
Yeah, this fucking movie, like I can't. I picked up this Blu-ray, and I legitimately felt like I had never seen the movie before. There were scenes in this movie that for the last 30 years, I was convinced I knew what was going on, only to discover I was completely wrong. Because I couldn't see the scene before, so like I just sort of guessed what was happening.
I mean, I'm gonna put your watch number at probably high double digits.
Well, probably when I was a kid, I watched this movie all the time. So
that's what I'm saying. So you've seen this. That's what I'm saying. So for you to discover something new on this new transfer means there's a lot to discover because this.
Yeah. It's also kind of fun that they included an alternate cut of the film as the main feature. I would have liked them to include both cuts because I think that would have just.
What are the cut differences?
So this one is the version that's actually on that Australian tape that you held up earlier. The main difference is in the Mogul or the Troma version. The zombies show up after Sarah says those are strange fireworks and sits down or goes into the tent, and then it cuts to the couples talking in their tents and. Then the zombies attack. In this version, it flips those scenes, so the talking happens. So it takes the zombies another like 5 minutes to show up, which I didn't realize how much that affected the film until I watched it with some friends the other night. And it was totally like, yeah, this really doesn't like that scene happening even 5 minutes earlier helps the pacing a great deal because at one point my friend's wife forgot it was a zombie movie. Until somebody said, "Oh, when are the zombies going to show up?" And she goes, "Wait, this is a zombie movie? I thought it was about a haunted bell." And so when the zombies finally showed up,
so what I'm hearing, Chris, this isn't the definitive version. You're not done yet.
No, I mean, I talked to Tony about it because he wasn't what happened was the film was pre-sold overseas. So basically, when they shot the movie, and I think while they were in post. That his agent or whoever he was in contact with had pre-sold the movie to Europe and they needed it right away. So he cut together basically a cut of the film to deliver, and that got delivered overseas. And then it took a few more months for it to get released here. So in that time, he kind of tweaked it a little bit, and that's how it got those scenes got reordered. So he actually wasn't too happy with the fact that they put this version out and not the other one. Because it's not his, quote, director's cut or his even final cut. It's essentially an early cut that he, made some changes to. And I think there were some other shots in the film that he tightened up a little bit throughout the cutting process and, that weren't in this version either. But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm happy that it's out. I mean, whatever cut it is, it's out there.
Does Troma still own this, or is this strictly from? Okay,
yeah, they own it forever. Yeah,
that's what I thought. Then there is a shot, Chris, because they did fix Bloodhook to make that the shorter version, the much better version, on their Blu-ray. So
yeah, maybe.
You never know. You may be able to get a couple extras on there. I mean, it's Troma, so don't expect anything, but you may get some on there.
I don't know if I think once Vinegar Syndrome's done with this, I can't imagine anybody else going, yeah, we'll put that out again.
They've been Troma's been putting out all the ones that have gone out of print though. I haven't seen one yet that hasn't. I mean, that considering what Lloyd has said may just end up the new print on streaming, but it's not impossible
Yeah. I mean, it's
if it sells out.
well, what's funny is the edition without the slipcover has sold more than the one with. I was looking at the numbers the other day. There's like less than 300 of the one without the slipcover.
There is currently 270.
Yeah.
And yeah, still well over 1,000 for the slipped version.
I don't know if I don't know why people are jumping for the non-slip version, but usually Vinegar Syndrome's
because you can't display the beautiful Curse of the Cannibal Confederates artwork if you have a slipcover on it.
Oh yeah, that's the problem.
You know I have that cover out, right?
I hate you.
But it's covered by the regular slip. But it's one of those things. It's Troma, so
yeah, because Tony wanted to remake this at one point, and I was 100% behind that. And then we found out that Troma had it forever. I mean, he knew he had sold it, but I think he thought there might have been an opportunity to buy it back, and there wasn't. So even at that point, with Lloyd saying it's one of the worst titles they own, they weren't interested in selling it back to Tony. So they saw value in it somewhere or at some point.
Probably because you kept bugging Vinegar Syndrome.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm sure every studio has gotten a request for that back in when you first started your mission.
No, not really, because it really wasn't one that it was really when Vinegar Syndrome started doing Troma titles that I was like, this is the only opportunity this film really has, is with this company. At that time, now there's a couple other ones that I could see doing it and probably doing okay with it. But I remember seeing the thing that really kind of got me going was seeing the photos that Tony had shown me from the shooting where, they were taken with a regular camera and you could see that stuff was lit pretty well. And I was like, I wonder if the actual movie is supposed to look like this too. Because I think a lot of people thought with that tape and that DVD being so dark that look was very intentional. When, as you can see on the Blu-ray, yes, it's still a dark film, but you can see a lot more than you could before. In that, in some scenes, you can see anything. But there's like even them coming out of the ground, most of them are just guys with dirt thrown on them, whatever. But I didn't even think the dirt had been thrown on them. I thought like they were just lying on the ground and sitting up, you couldn't see it for sure. And then I think it's the flag bearer zombie. The first time you see him, he's got this big giant worm crawling across his face. I never saw that before. Like, the captain has a bullet hole in his head. I never saw it before. So there's a lot of things I was like, holy shit, like I can actually see this movie. So
Dan has a question. He said, did Mark Redfield's performance as the lead zombie give you Bub vibes, excuse me.
I suppose a little bit. He is one of the things that people will point out in the film as being one of the, ironically, a lot of people point him out as the best actor in the film, which really isn't that far off from the truth. He delivers much more of a performance than some of the other actors do, but they'll all tell you the same thing, that they weren't really actors. They were just, kind of folks who, wanted to try it out and see how it went. And none of them had delusions of grandeur of becoming Hollywood, royalty, but they just thought, this sounds like fun. Let's do it. But Mark was like, he was only 15 when he did the film, which blew me away because he was the captain, the Confederate captain. So obviously with the gray beard, which is makeup, looked a lot older than 15. But he did give the best performance in the film. So, I mean, granted, a lot of it is just screaming and standing there, but there's at least emotion behind it, and yeah. So, I mean, he's probably the best part of the movie.
Yeah, and Dan said he's remained active and went on to play one of the main roles in one of his personal favorites, Chainsaw Sally.
Yeah. Actually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the article that I wrote for Scars, the cover of the magazine was Chainsaw Sally, which I didn't even piece together at the time. But I think she was on the cover of that issue. And yeah, it's just crazy to me that this movie actually like had lighting, because again, like for years.
Yeah, I remember, because didn't you get access to those photos? I remember you showing me something where it was light.
Yeah, I used them for the article. Tony sent me a bunch of them.
Okay, that's right.
I think he actually sent me the original pictures, which at the time, I look back at that now, I'm really surprised he did that, because I was like a 15-year-old kid at that point who was like, I want to write this, or 16 or 17. I wasn't like, I was young, but I wanted to write this article really badly, and I needed photos, and he didn't have a scanner at the time. So he sent me the photos because I worked at Staples and I could scan them. And then I scanned them and I mailed them right back to him. But I'm surprised he did that, to be honest. But, you know,
Probably because you worked at Staples and you could mail them right back from work.
yeah, pretty much. But yeah, it was a weird time back then. He's, you know, but we've been friends ever since. I mean, we've kept in contact and, you know, talked here and there throughout the process of this and prior to it. And every now and again, I'd hit him up and say, like, hey, you know, someday it's going to happen. Someday Curse of the Screaming Dead's going to make the leap and we're going to see it on Blu-ray. And all he kept telling me was the amount of work it would take for somebody to properly restore it probably isn't worth it.
Did he think he was going to have to do it? Get there and scrub that negative.
No, he was fine with doing that. He told me that he would have done it. Why not? You know, it's his movie. So
yeah. Well, the big question now is, I know there's going to be this is, you know, not going to be a normal rating. I'm going to go with out of 5. What do you give it? Because I know you got a lot of nostalgia with this one. It holds a special place in your heart.
Yeah.
How much does that affect your rating? See, I like to rate off my enjoyment while watching a film. So,
yeah, I mean, I still find it. I mean, I like I said the other night, I watched it with some friends. My friend buddy Josh is a really big Troma fan, and this was one of their pickups that he had never seen, so he really wanted to watch it. And everyone in the room was entertained. I mean, we all thought, like, there was parts of it where we were, you know, just chatting or whatever because we weren't missing anything. But there were certainly scenes that, you know, we stopped and listened and paid attention and laughed and, you know, whatever. So it's not a great film, though. And I preface that with everyone that I tell about it. Like, this is a terrible movie. It's slow. It's padded poorly. Again, we're dealing with someone walking in the woods for 10 minutes. There's when the zombies start coming out of the ground, that's a 5-minute scene. The flesh eating is a 7-minute scene. Like, that's, you know, another 30 minutes of padding in an 80-minute, 90-minute film. So I don't know. It's hard because I do like it a lot, but I also recognize it's not a great movie. I'd probably give it a low end 3 is what I would give it. It's good, you know, with my nostalgia and whatnot mixed in. I think that's a fair rating.
All right. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm really like a 2.5 on this one. Where I can have fun with it, but it's not a great film, but I can still have fun with it. I'm putting it in the middle as average. Like, it helps if you watch Night of Terror, right? Night of Horror, right?
Horror.
I got it. Night of Horror right before. It really does help.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think Dan's going to try to join us. He said he's had no issues for 10 minutes. So I'm going to bring him on now and let's see, and we can talk about our next film. Dan, how you doing?
All right. I'll rely on the chat to see if this is even bearable. No.
You're fine, Dan.
Nobody said anything.
I think it's the same issue. Can you hear me talking right now?
No. Punks. Yeah.
Bye, Dan.
Sorry, I tried. I'll be in the chat.
All right, back to the
Sorry,
chat.
guys.
Get out of here, you Confederate zombie hating bastard.
I think he's team. Anyway,
That would, this would be a fucking difficult movie to remake now, though, because how do you have sympathy? Like you have to have sympathy for the Confederates, and a lot of people don't anymore. So
well, this was a regional horror. I'm just guessing it depends on what region you were in.
that's fair. That's fair. That's a fair point. Yeah.
I'm going to say some areas of the country it's going to do. Hell, yeah. Let's just move on to our next film. And geez, what do we call our next film? I don't want to start a fight.
The movie with 3 titles.
Yes, and I'm trying to pull up. I guess House on Tombstone Hill, aka The Dead Come Home, aka Dead Dudes in the House. I know Chris loves that. So well, here we go. This is another one. I mean, you've been talking about this one for a while. I don't think you've had that urge that like force behind it you did on the last one, but I know this is another one you wanted to see finally make the leap to Blu-ray.
Well, this one wasn't nearly as difficult as Curse was. This was a simple, hey, do you guys want to do this movie? Yeah, we should do that movie. Okay, great. And that came together in a week. I'm not even exaggerating. I think I talked to my buddy over at Vinegar Syndrome about it because there was a crappy DVD, once again, by Troma, and overseas there was a much better DVD. The picture quality was just leaps and bounds better than what we had. And I think I just kind of went, well, there has to be there's a better version of it out there somewhere. So, this is one that I can feel like Vinegar Syndrome could put out and do pretty well with. So I reached out to my buddy and I said, do you guys want to do it? And I'm in contact with the director, and he said, yeah, we'll do it. And then I contacted the director. The director contacted Vinegar Syndrome, and I think a month later it was coming out. I was like, wow, that was easy. Now where's Curse of the Screaming Dead?
Now the thing with this is I know there's some anti-Troma people. This is a pickup, and I think even for the people who don't like Troma, I think this one is worth checking out. Which is kind of tipping my hat a little, but yeah. So on that, Chris, give us the quick rundown of what it's about.
A group of friends inherit or they buy an old house, and they decide they're going to fix it up as a bed and breakfast. And one of them awakens the spirit of a very pissed off, very dangerous old woman who's goes
not
to the
rabbit
house.
Grannies.
Not rabbit grannies. She goes to the house and she starts killing them off one by one in slasher style. But after they die, they get up and they start coming after their friends in Evil Dead style. And that's, then it's just a matter of who's going to make it to the end, if anyone at all. By the time the folks in the house, once they realize they're trapped, they start to realize that their friends are coming back to life and are now homicidal. And now not only do they need to try to survive the house, they need to try to survive their friends who are zombified killers. So
They got to avoid the dead dudes in the house. Such a dumb name. That's why I like it. This is one of the movies like that when you watch it back in the day. I'm sure you watch it in spite of the name.
I got it in one of the Troma. I think it's one of the Toxie's top 10 box sets.
Oh, I think it's in one of the 3s. It might be in the 10 also.
It's in the 10. They're all
okay.
And I think they all were included in the 10s. I think they're, if I remember right, you just like, I don't know. But yeah, I that cover art, man, I never would have picked this up ever. I also wouldn't have picked it up under House on Tombstone Hill either, to be frank, because I mean it just looked like a slasher film.
That's what I'm saying. That one just feels too generic.
Yeah, but
The Dead Come Home is always the one that like just feels like it's the right one for me.
Right, and it's the original title as well. But no, this is a fun little movie. And it, what it lacks in budget, it makes up for in ingenuity. I mean, there's a lot of cool, fun stuff in it, and some atmospheric and creepy stuff too. But then there's a lot of really stupid shit.
There's a comment. John Hinckley says my Dead Dudes VHS dub from Cinemax broadcast was better quality than the Troma DVD
I
release.
believe that. Yeah, I
Uh,
believe that. But my big issue with one of my issues with this film is the zombie characters are dispatched off pretty fucking easily. Like there's only one of them that's like a little difficult to kill, and then there's the old woman, but pretty much the rest of them, it's like doesn't take much. One dude is like legitimately taken out by a piece of wood that's like the size of a twig. There's no nail sticking out of it. There's nothing, like she just like taps him on the side of the head and he dies. And I'm like, well, this isn't really much of a threat if they're able to be killed off that easily, but whatever. But then there's that one who is whistling Jimmy Crack Corn while sharpening his little saw blade weapon that he made earlier in the film. That scene I always thought was pretty creepy. Like the other guys are just in the room and they hear him whistling somewhere, so they know he's in the house. And but there are, as Dan said, there's some good gore and some good some makeup in this one.
The window kill he mentioned specifically, and then Ed French also did the FX for Nightmare in the Damaged Brain.
Right. I don't know. Yeah, but it's a fun movie. What do you think of this one? I don't think I've ever asked you your opinion on it.
You sure? I'm pretty sure we've talked about this for a long time. Remember
the people here don't know that, so like
Well, see, I was almost going to use a word you don't like. See, now it sounds weird. I was also going to use some jargon Chris doesn't understand. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I thought I am a fan of this one. This one I saw under the Dead Dudes title. I enjoyed it, from the get-go. Because it was one of those like where, Troma was hit and miss. Sometimes they were good. It was all over the place with the pickups. But this was one that, like, even at the time, I was like, people aren't going to want to watch Dead Dudes in the house. But whatever. I enjoyed it, and I always have. It's just it's a low budget one, but it's ambitious, and I do really like the cast and everything that's going on in this one. It is just a fun haunted house, trapped in a house picture. The Night of the Living Dead situation.
I can see that, and I can it definitely has like an Evil Dead-esque type of vibe too. And it's got some fun jokes in it as well. There's some fun character moments in it. Really, it's just a fun little B movie. I mean, it doesn't. I don't think it really breaks any new ground or anything like that. But it certainly has a great time doing what it's doing. I can't remember the guy's name. I think it was his name. I think it was this guy. No, it wasn't him. I'm trying to look on. I'm cheating. I'm checking IMDb right now.
That's okay. Do it all the time.
But one of the actors, the guy who actually played the one who whistles the Jimmy Crack Corn and walking through the hallway. I found him on Facebook years ago, and he was a comedian out in New York. And he actually invited me to a comedy show that he was doing. He said if I ever wanted, because I asked him about the film, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, yeah, no, I was in it, and it was a lot of fun, and yada yada." And he's like, "If you want to come out to one of my comedy shows, I'm a much better comedian than I was an actor." And I never, I can't remember his name, and I don't remember his character name either. I guess I should have had this all ready before I decided to look into it. But anyway, continue on.
No, I mean, there's not much more. I mean, on this one, I mean, I think it's just a fun B movie, like you said. It's one of the better Troma pickups, I think. So if you're still listening and you aren't a Troma fan, sorry, but this is one to look into. So, and Vinegar Syndrome put it out. Is it technically still a Troma movie? I'd have to look at if they still own it or not.
I feel like this is another one they own.
Yeah, I think it is too.
Yeah,
but we did get Dead Dudes on the reverse art too. The one thing I'm always happy about. I do wish we had Mogul on the other one on Curse of the Screaming Dead at least.
That would have been nice. What was the what was weird about this release was when they put it on Blu-ray, the slip says House on Tombstone Hill on one side of the spine, and that's
right.
one of the case. And then you flip it, and it says Dead Come Home on that side, and then you look, and then I think the inside says Dead Come Home, if I'm not mistaken, and then the flip says Dead Dudes in the House instead of House on Tombstone Hill. That always bugged me. And I was like, why didn't you guys just like not do that?
Well, now it shows the House on Tombstone Hill.
Oh, then maybe it's not Dead Come Home.
Yeah.
One of them doesn't have the right title because obviously they're using Dead Dudes in the House on the flip side. So
yeah,
if you have that slipcover, you're getting.
I don't think I have the slipcover on this one. It's like one of the only Troma ones I don't like. Troma Vinegar Syndrome. You know what I mean?
Well, damn. What's wrong with you? You didn't get the.
They sent me a screener, so.
Oh. Yeah.
Back when they used to do cool stuff like that. We got another question. Chris, would this be better known if they used the Dead Dudes on the Block title?
Dead Dudes? Oh, like the New Kids on the Block?
Even if they used the Dead Dudes on the Block. I don't know. Maybe the teenage girls. Yeah, they're not going to want to. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, they certainly looked like the Dead Dudes on the Block.
Well, there you go.
Cover.
Chris approves.
I don't know because
none of those people are in the goddamn movie.
Yeah, I think there's like one shot from the film on that cover. The rest of it is all like.
I want to see that movie too, though, where you have all these bad early 90s looking guys getting attacked by the rabid granny. I would watch that movie too.
I suppose. Yeah. I mean, I never. It's another one I don't think I ever saw it kicking around anywhere, to be honest. But I think if I had, I would have definitely passed it over. Even House on Tombstone Hill, I wouldn't have given a second thought to, because again, like that wouldn't have resonated with me in any way of being a movie. Oh, this is a supernatural pseudo zombie film, or something like that, because that's kind of what it is. But it is structured like a slasher, so I mean, there's that. But
what title is on the print, on the Vinegar Syndrome print?
Dead Come Home.
I watched it on Troma. It says Dead Dudes in the House.
Does it really? Is it the remastered version on Troma?
Yes.
And they fucking retitled those. I can't with these people.
It's like that on Peacock also.
That's wrong.
That's
so wrong.
Troma's got to get their money. Wait, I'll tell you what they do with Curse of the Cannibal Confederates. I mean, Curse of the Screaming Dead.
That
one
one
popped up on streaming yet.
That one, I imagine they would just put the title over it because they'd have to recut that title sequence again with the new footage. Or God, if they use the Video Master footage, holy shit!
I hope they just do. And they just hard cut the HD. So we have to have that Troma opening with the little scene.
At least then people would like realize, oh shit, look how different this movie looks now. But I don't know. Did we rate this one yet?
Yes, we should. Chris, what do you give whatever you want to call this movie? What of its three titles?
The movie with the three titles. I would probably give this one a really solid 3.5. Maybe even close to a 4. It's a really fun, little ambitious, low budget movie that offers a lot more than one would think. Performances overall are pretty strong. There's a couple of first timers in the bunch that are a little weak, but no one's terrible. The effects are fun. The gore is fun. The atmosphere is good. The house is cool. The supernatural element works. Yeah, so this is a fun little movie that I think most seasoned horror fans would enjoy. I wouldn't recommend showing it to a new horror fan because this might not quite hit the same way. But
yeah, I'm a 4. I do like this, and as I already said, I think it's one of the better Troma pickups, so it's going to be a higher one for me. Yeah, Dead Dudes in the House gets a 4 out of 5. So does the other two. Chris is probably lower his numbers if I make him rate Dead Dudes in the House. It'd be like 2.5. Move along.
Fuck that title. I hate that title.
All right. So, anything else, Chris? Before we get out of here?
No, I
Well,
don't have any.
I'm going to promote something because I'm still working on it, but we're going to have the Toxic Avenger home video history from the first release to the current release coming soon on the channel. I just
Is that why you spent $50 on a tape?
No.
Oh, okay.
That was unrelated.
Oh, okay. I thought you were doing research, man.
Well, now it is. There's still, yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay. On that, I guess. Well, that's it for our Troma / Vinegar Syndrome show. Hopefully, we tricked a few into watching the Troma show. Chris, well, what do you got coming up? I know didn't you just drop an episode of the Spooky Picture Show? Family Picture Show?
I did. We did. We dropped an episode for Back to School last week or the week before. I can't even remember anymore. So we covered a lot of horror films that take place in or around a school, from high school all the way up into the college years, because we had to talk about Ghoulies 3, Ghoulies Go to College.
I wonder who pushed that one through.
I don't know. But it forever will remain a mystery unless you listen to the show. This October, we have a fun surprise coming up. I won't say what it is yet, but we're going to do something we haven't done before that I think is going to be very entertaining. So we'll try that little experiment out, see how that goes. But we are the Spooky Picture Show. You can find us on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, pretty much wherever podcasts are being posted nowadays. We're on there. I have to say this out, I really do. I'm very
miss doing shows with me. I know, Chris. It's okay.
No, not at all. I'm very confused about. No one can remember the Spooky Picture Show. Like, people always screw it up. Where we were, you called us the Spooky Family Picture Show. Which
no, that was Dan.
Okay, well, Dan, I don't know where that even came from. And
he said
one time, Felsher called it the Spooky Power Hour, and then he was on.
I like that though.
He was on another podcast where he called it the Spooky Horror Show, and I'm just like, no, the Horror Picture Show. I'm like, first of all, you're gonna get us sued. That's too close to Rocky Horror. Is it that hard to remember the Spooky Picture Show? Come on,
don't take anything. I remember Spooky Picture Show. He said he combined it with another show name.
Just silly.
Yeah, well. It's got to make it simple, like our 10 names for every single show we have. Yeah. So I guess on that note, let me before Dan gets all this Wednesday, we have a big supersized show. We'll be covering VHS 85, Pet Cemetery Bloodlines, Exorcist Believer, Chucky, and some other stuff. And then we also have a visual vengeance show coming up with Replicator and the other the Abomination. So stay tuned for those this week also.
Cool.
All right, on that note, Chris, say goodnight.
All right, good night, everybody. Thank you.
All right, stay sick till next time.